Tim Dee is a naturalist, a nature writer and a broadcaster, a radio broadcaster as well. He is here at the University of Gloucestershire to deliver one of the Humanities Public Lecture series tonight, in just a few minutes in fact, and he's very kindly agreed to speak to us briefly here. Tim, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
I wonder if I could begin by asking you about your latest project, which we're going to hear about shortly.
Well, you'll hear a little bit about it. I wish I was further down the line with it. I'm going to write a book about spring and about following the spring. There's a wonderful fact that spring arrives in Europe and moves north just thanks to the tilting of the earth and the way that the springtime moves effectively from the equator northwards, but it moves at about 3.5 miles an hour, 4 miles an hour north. We know that because the 10-degree isotherm, which is the temperature at which little insects begin to appear and grass greens up, travels north through Europe from about late December, early January, through till the midsummer time, in middle of June, late June. And it moves at about the speed of walking pace. So with that idea in mind, I thought it would be a wonderful chance and opportunity to follow the spring at walking pace, especially at a time where I feel my own springs are either limited or have gone. So I'm keen on exploring. I feel I've written a book about two previous books, one on birds particularly, which was a book about, in some ways, about the air, about places where birds live but where we don't, but yet where we reach towards. Second book called Four Fields, about the earth, about the kind of shared common ground. This next book, in a way, is a book about time and about living in the world, but living in time at the same time as the world itself is running all sorts of different cycles and sequences. So it's an attempt to feel the passing of time from a in a bodily sense, if you like, but also to live through a whole season, and a season which for me as a bird watcher is the most energizing, exciting, enriching season of the year. The truth is that the summer, which everybody sort of waits for and loves, is to me a very slack time of year. Birds have stopped singing by then. That kind of the way which trees go from that fresh salady green in the spring to that kind of more darker, opaque, heavy green of the summer, that says something to me. It's like a hammock in the year. Things start getting exciting again in September, so the kind of parallel to the spring when everything starts leaving and dying. Spring is everything starting to green up and coming. Swallows, all of those things, cuckoos, that sort of thing. So it's an attempt to delve into those ideas. I mean, which of course have been anciently hugely significant, both imaginatively as well as agriculturally, to everyone in the Northern Hemisphere, in the same way as the harvest is at the other end of the year, and so forth.
I was thinking about that midnight, that green July midnight, that dead midnight that you describe it in the Ukraine section of Four Fields. And I think as a bird watcher and a nature writer, you've helped me to understand how that world is inverted. I'm not a bird watcher. How July is the dead heart of the year as well. It's the green rimmed saucer with the dark part in. I'm appalled by the descriptions of the bird life around the dead zone in Ukraine, and how I think you say that a bird that is too late is dead.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to write that book, was to write about ordinary birds that are familiar to us, but caught up in extraordinary times and extraordinary places, and exporting, if you like, the basic simple idea of a field, a green field that we all know and recognise as a kind of default substrate, the green substrate, and investigate some places where things were going wrong, where this man-made bit of ground wrestled from the earth has been so damaged and destroyed by us human activity that it's poisoning and killing everything that comes onto it, everything that arrives in it. Same swallows that we get in Britain also summer in the Ukraine, and they keep on coming into the exclusion zone in Chernobyl and they are able to breed, but their young never come back. You know, so the young might leave the nest in August, September time and attempt to fly south, but they don't come back. Adult birds fly away and come back again, but they're often coming later and later in the year, or they're even arriving with effectively a radiation sickness with aberrations and mutations, which are meaning that they're almost certainly not long for this world.
A field of death, or a sink, as you describe it.
It's really extraordinary. Just, I mean, a lot of attention. I mean, opinion divides. Some people are very keen to see the absence of the removal of people from the exclusion zone in Chernobyl as being an opportunity for nature, as a resurgent wilderness. You know, there are meant to be moose and meant to be wolves there.
Yes,
there are, but they're incredibly few, and they don't seem to be doing very well. There is an ecological term of a sink. I mean, which is used to describe how it works in Chernobyl, which is that this is effectively a place that is open and available to incoming wildlife, but which cannot sustain it. So gives nothing out. It's, all that's left for the animals that arrive into it. Every year, new swallows coming, attempting to breed in what looks like superficially a good place for them to be, discovering actually that it's a very sick and sickening place.
Extraordinarily haunting, that place, that sink. You use the image of the prehistoric lake, the sink into which rivers flow and don't flow out. Anyone watching this video will by now recognise that you're a highly poetic writer, but yet you also exist on perhaps the margins of travel writing. And I was thinking about that relationship between travel writing and nature writing. Certainly a book like Four Fields is both. And I'm sometimes reminded of that when I'm reading Kathleen Jamie. Any thoughts, Tim, about the relationship between travel and nature writing?
Yeah, I hope I'm not too negative about travel writing and what I'm going to say. I mean, for me, it's very important to know the places that I'm writing about. I mean, you sometimes read, and they can be fantastically good books, but books which are written out of a single journey, a single experience in a place. I mean, it's true that actually I've only been into the exclusion zone of Chernobyl once for a short time, for a few weeks, but I wanted, in that chapter, for example, also to write about related natural grasslands, so steppe grassland in the Crimea, which I've been travelling backwards and forwards to over a couple of decades now. So I kind of make it a rule with myself that I'm not going to write about places. I'm not going to go for a walk, if you like, and write about it. I mean, I do go for a walk and write about it, but it will be in a place which I've walked in before. And most importantly for me, and I think this is a kind of absolute rule of thumb, is not to be, is try to draw upon experiences and places that you've been to and have had when you were there without expecting to write about them. I mean, don't only write out of a mission to write a chapter or an essay or an article or even a book. I mean, I think too many of my nature writing colleagues are perhaps not able to draw on years of looking at nature in situ, years of being in a landscape without automatically and inevitably thinking, I've got to get 5,000 words out of this. I mean, it's wonderful to discover that places you went to as a child can be extraordinarily potent now in your adult life, and precisely for the very reason that when you were a child, you weren't thinking of converting the experience into so many yards of prose.
Yards of prose, the perfect metaphor, is in fact, for travel and nature writing.
Yeah. And I mean, of course, travel. There's some fantastic travel writing, and some wonderful travel writing can come out of a parachuted experience. A man arrives in China from somewhere else and writes an astonishing account of what it's like to be a man arriving in China from somewhere else. But I'm probably at the bottom more interested in the Chinese woman's account of what it is to be in China and have been there for forever, if you see what I mean. Yeah.
Dwelling rather than walking.
Yeah, I mean, I love moving through places, but I think if we can find a way of drawing upon not exactly the pre-literate experience, but certainly the sense of of being in a place without the automatic need to convert it into. It's not that we don't convert it into language, because I don't think we can be in a place without making it into language. That's how we experience everything, even as children. But I'm very keen to try to tap into, in my own experience, previous travels, previous experiences that were effectively non-literary in their origins.
Well, the non-literary and the end of language seems like a good place to kind of stop here. Tim D, thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.